From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. The Alabama Legislature met today for the 23rd day of the legislative session. That means we have 7 more possible meeting days left that will be spread out over the next 3 weeks. We are almost home. We'll start tonight's coverage in the House, where workforce development and transformation was the theme of the day. We've been reporting on this package of bills aimed at improving the state's lagging workforce participation rate and getting more able-bodied Alabamians back into the workforce. Several of those bills were on the House floor today, including House Bill 346, the housing tax credit sponsored by Representative Cynthia Almond. It would provide an incentive for developers to build affordable housing and take advantage of federal grant dollars to do it, all for the purpose of making sure affordable housing isn't a barrier to someone pursuing a job.
The goal of this package of bills is really to provide, in the case of this bill, incentives to help people get back into the workforce. And so the first bill is the one I have here, which is a workforce housing tax credit. And of course, one of the major issues with people not being able to either leave, say, their Section 8 housing where they are living or move to another area to relocate for a job is their inability to afford quality housing. So in general, this bill creates a state workforce housing tax credit that complements an existing federal program it's been in existence since President Reagan. He's the one who initiated this program.
That bill passed and now goes to the Senate. I actually spoke extensively about this bill with Representative Almond last night, and you can see that interview on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search Capitol Journal. The next workforce bill up was House Bill 358, the Child Care Tax Credit from Representative Anthony Daniels. It would incentivize employers to fund child care options for their workers. It would also incentivize child care providers to expand access and improve quality, all to help remove affordable child care as a barrier to the workforce. Representative Barbara Drummond carried the bill on the floor.
As many of us know, that child care is an impediment to workforce as well as a number of other issues in Alabama, but the changes to the bill that was from the introduced bill is that for employers' tax credit, it will be a non-refundable tax credit. There will be a cap on individual businesses for employee tax credit at $600K per year. It will be a 75 cents on the dollar tax credit rather than a dollar for large businesses. $1 for dollar for businesses with 25 employees or less. Eligible employees must make below $80K per year, excluding overtime or bonuses. There will be a graduated cap increase for overall cap. Year 1, $15 million. Year 2, $17.5 million. Year 3, $20 million. For nonprofit child care centers, it is now a grant program through DHR, but due to the lack of tax liability of these nonprofit centers. For other child care centers, it is a refundable tax credit that may not carry it forward for future years.
That bill passed and now goes to the Senate. Here's the complete list of workforce bills that passed the House today. Senate Bill 247, the Workforce Transformation Act. This would consolidate the state's sometimes duplicative workforce departments into one agency with a cabinet-level director. Senate Bill 325, the Alabama Growth Alliance Act. This would establish a public-private partnership focused on the state's long-term economic development efforts. And Senate Bill 253, the Career Pathways Act. This would encourage Alabama students to pursue trades and align instruction to suit their career paths. In the Senate today, lawmakers took up and passed legislation seeking to improve Alabama's open records law. Right now, citizens and the news media have the right to obtain a copy of public records from state agencies within certain parameters, but there are no required deadlines for responses. Under Senate Bill 270 from Senator Arthur Orr, a public officer must acknowledge a records request within 10 business days and must provide a substantive response, either fulfilling or denying it, within 15 business days after that. The bill passed the Senate and now goes to the House. More talk of gambling legislation as the conference committee with delegates from the House and Senate held informal discussions this afternoon. They're trying to determine if a compromise can be reached between the two different versions passed by the two different chambers. Two members of that conference committee seem to have different levels of optimism today.
You know, when we passed it, we passed with 22 votes. And then when we had the question for the conference, we had 19 votes. 2 of those were new. So we lost 5 votes that we got to figure out why we lost those and how do we regain them. We're going in the wrong direction that way. That's one thing I know. As far as the whack-a-mole game, you know, once you move one thing, you lose this and such. The window of opportunity of what each side wants, and by that I mean House and Senate, is very, very small. There's lots of opportunities to find a path, but to get to that path, we've got to be able to have votes. And right now, I don't see 63 in the House, nor do I see 21 in the Senate.
I'm optimistic, you know, and I feel real good about, you know, what could come out. And I think that there's some things that could be worked out. But at the end of the day, we have not sit down and talked any strategy. We have not talked about anything that could be or where it is. I think the only thing we've been doing is looking at what both bills said in comparison to 2 bills and just trying to see what the comparison are. I have confidence in the package that will come out, that those 19 will grow and we'll get the number that we need. I have confidence in that.
Also moving in the legislature is a bill to adjust Alabama's election qualification deadline so that President Joe Biden doesn't get left off the November ballot. The issue is that the Democratic National Convention won't officially nominate Biden until after Alabama's statutory qualification deadline has passed. But Democrats and Republicans seem to all agree on legislation that would fix the problem, just as they had to do in 2020 when it was President Donald Trump at risk of being left off the ballot.
I think that is very important. It is, you know, it's highly, you know, impossible for the state of Alabama to lead the president of the United States off. I can see it was just a candidate or something, but the sitting president, and I don't think the state of Alabama want that embarrassment. So both parties has been working together to try to make sure that this happens.
Big news today for Alabama's coast and all those who visit Baldwin County beaches. Governor Kay Ivey announced today that the Alabama Department of Transportation has agreed to purchase the Foley Beach Express toll bridge in Orange Beach. That will result in the toll coming off for travelers and commuters once the deal is complete. They're estimating sometime in May. You may remember that the state has been tied up in litigation over AlDOT's planned additional bridge over the Intercoastal Waterway about a mile away from the toll bridge. Construction will continue on that new bridge, and the plan is to have both bridges work in conjunction with each other once complete. The entire route from Interstate 10 to the island will become a state highway to be named State Route 161. Coming up after the break, I'll sit down with State Senator Chris Elliott of Baldwin County to talk about this development, plus other issues. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Birmingham's Rickwood Field is the nation's oldest operating ballpark and served as the home field of the Birmingham Barons, Birmingham A's, and the Birmingham Black Barons for decades. The Birmingham Barons inaugurated the new field on August 18, 1910, by defeating the Montgomery Climbers. The Black Barons played there between 1924 and 1950. Rickwood hosted Birmingham's minor league teams for several seasons through 1987. From 1967 to 1975, the Barons were owned by Ensley native Charlie O. Finley and were part of the Kansas City and later Oakland A's organization. More than 100 members of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame have played at the field, including Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Satchel Paige, and Willie Mays. Today, the historic field is managed by Friends of Rickwood and hosts local amateur and college teams. The Birmingham Barons still play a ceremonial throwback game at the ballpark every year, the Rickwood Classic, which celebrates Barons teams of the past and this historic field.
You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is State Senator Chris Elliott from Baldwin County. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, big news today. We got a lot to talk about, but big news today is the bridge situation. The governor's office announcing that the state, I guess the Department of Transportation, is purchasing the Foley Beach Express toll road. Is it the whole road or just the bridge?
It's the bridge, and a portion of the road very close to the bridge itself.
Okay, so there will no longer be a toll on it.
That's correct.
Tell me, I mean, I didn't see this coming. Has this conversation been ongoing for a while?
It has been. So it's important to note that this is likely, and I haven't seen the documents yet, but likely part of a settlement for a lawsuit that's going on right now about inverse condemnation. You'll recall the state is building a bridge very close to the existing bridge, and there's a lawsuit going on. I would imagine, and I'm speculating a little bit here, but I would imagine that this purchase is part of a settlement of that lawsuit and also a purchase of a real asset that will help move traffic. So I commend the governor and Director Cooper for moving forward with this. It's another $60 million investment in my district in coastal Alabama, right next to a $65 million investment that will need an additional $10+ million or so to actually connect all of that back together. So big news, big investment, and good news for the over 8 million visitors that we have to Alabama's beaches and the 100,000 or so a weekend that come to the island.
So we're getting into the tourist season, right?
Oh, we're there.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, we're there.
Well, so I was going to ask you about that other bridge because, that will still go forward, right?
Yeah, it will still go forward. The press release that I saw today and some conversations I've had with the governor's office and cabinet officials have indicated that the new bridge that they're building now will be southbound traffic only, and that the toll bridge will be northbound traffic only.
Oh, okay.
So one way on the new bridge and one way on the old toll bridge back north. Now, I've got some local mayors that have some issues and concerns about how that's going to affect local traffic, and I think it's important to know that while we have those 8 million visitors and those 100,000 extra people, there are those of us who still go across that bridge to go to school or go to work, and so we need to make sure that we're taking into account the local traffic as well. So I think we're going to have some more conversations about how that all fleshes out. But the big news today should be and is the removal of the toll on that bridge, purchased by ALDOT, and again, a good move by the governor.
Well, when I remember looking at the plans of that second bridge aerially, and it kind of goes into that same canal road that the other bridge connects for. So is there any plan in the future to have more roads going, I guess, south because that road is so congested right there?
It is. So it would make sense that if we're going to the Gulf, right, if we're going to the beach, that you get there as directly as possible. Another part of ALDOT's press release today was additional widening of Canal Road, and also a redesign, if you will, of the intersection of 161 and 81. It's where the Tom Thumb gas station is there. If anybody that's been down Canal Road, you sit at that light. And so there are plans to make that an easy curve, and this wouldn't be a statewide story if we didn't have almost every man, woman, and child in the state there every single.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal on how we get there and how we get back out. especially when it comes to hurricane evacuations. But to answer your question directly about going across the island, a cross-island connector, if you will, that goes across the state park. And so there have always been environmental concerns, and as a matter of fact, there's a federal court order right now that prohibits the state from building that road, even if it wanted to. It was part of the settlement to build the new Gulf State Park the lodge at Gulf State Park with the restore money. And so there's a moratorium on that, probably for another 8+ years or so, at which point we might be able to consider that. And that is something in the scheme of things we need to probably look at.
So not anytime soon.
No.
Well, this is really making me want to go to the beach. So anyway.
Me too.
I want to talk about your other bill.
Sure.
Your having to do with boards and commissions. What, it was like a 500-page bill?
525.
Goodness gracious. But, I mean, a really important topic, because you have contended that some of the way that the state's boards and this is licensure boards and commissions have essentially become like a cottage industry, a for-profit cottage industry for a handful of people. And so you're wanting to reform that process, get the state involved, and so kind of walk through what your bill does.
Yeah, we have, over the years, the legislature has established these boards, occupational licensing boards, to really oversee the licensing of certain occupations, everything from auctioneers to geologists, you get the idea. And what we have seen is that oftentimes these smaller boards don't have the resources they need financially to have their own staffs. And so what they end up doing is they contract out these services to somebody who may do them part-time. And these private folks have made essentially a cottage industry out of this. You also have some lobbyists that have seen, a profit center there, and so they've gotten involved in the game too. And what they've done, in my mind, is really kind of perverted that process where you end up with folks fining or layering levels of education requirements, other profit centers on top of what is initially just a simple license to really gain more money out of that system. They also, according to the reports that we see in the Sunset Committee and the Contract Review Committee, don't do a great job administering these boards. And so you have all these substantial findings year over year over year that stack up. And you saw me put those up on the dais today on the floor. And so they're just not great operators. And so what I'm trying to do is set up an organization under the Department of Labor, which will probably be the Department of Workforce and Labor by the time this is all over with, to provide the administrative services that these boards need to be able to function. We shouldn't expect these folks who are volunteers, who are on the midwifery board, for instance, to somehow or another become experts in state procurement law or accounting or anything else. We need to provide those administrative services to them if the legislature is going to say, hey, you go be a board and operate this. But some of these boards are operating out of someone's house. They're keeping records in a shoebox. I mean, this is not how we should run essentially a state agency. And so that was what we were trying to accomplish. There is still time for that bill to move forward.
I was going to ask you, what it got carried over, meaning it can come back, but what was the issue there?
Frankly, I think some of my colleagues had not had time to digest this legislation. It is a big piece of legislation.
Right.
It is complicated. It is dealing with essentially 20 different or plus different state agencies at this point. But it's good government, and at the end of the day, it's worth doing. It's just not intriguing or sexy. It's one of those things that you got to really want to do good government in order to pay attention to it, because there are a lot of other things going on right now. And so I had a commitment from Senator Smitherman today to look deeper into that, to focus on that over the weekend some. And it's my hope to continue to bring this issue back up. And I think the Senate is keen to take action on it. I mean, they have seen some of the problems firsthand, again, in Sunset and Contract Review, et cetera. And they've heard from their constituents who are licensees that say this is out of control.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're talking about workers. These are folks' jobs, and it depends on these things. So I'm curious that in your deep dive into this issue, you and Senator Gudger and others have been working on this. Did y'all come across any licensure boards or commission that maybe shouldn't exist? Like, do we have too much occupational licensing?
We do, and there have been studies out there that show that it's really a barrier to entry into the workforce in some instances. And you start asking your questions about, okay, we've got locksmiths and we've got this one board. It's got some sort of athletic name, but it means wrestling. And at the end of the day, you start having to wonder, hold on, is that something we really need to be doing? And if we do, fine, but let's not set it up essentially as its own different state agency that then goes out and contracts with this firm, because we've left them with no other option. They don't have the money to hire their own staff. And so let's figure out how to provide them the resources to be successful, because after we let these volunteer boards operate and enforce and everything else, but we provide them nothing, and then we say good luck, then we audit them and slap them on the hands for not doing it right, and that's just not fair.
Yeah, I've followed the occupational licensing issue nationally, and so I think it's interesting that it's really coming to a head here in the state. Well, speaking of all the other things that's going on, let me ask you about gambling. It's going to a conference committee, 3 members of the Senate, 3 members of the House. All of those members have been somewhat involved in the issue at some point. So you're not on the committee, but if it comes back to the Senate, you'll have a vote on it. What do you see happening? Do you think the House and Senate can come to any kind of compromise? Because they seem pretty far apart right now.
They do seem pretty far apart, and that's been the case really for the whole time. It is going to come down to what is in that conference committee report. I think that the Senate went about as far as it was going to go. I've made those statements before. I've seen my House colleagues make statements, we're not going to compromise on that, or we're not going to go that, we don't want to give up on this, that, and the other. And I'm confident that the conference committee is going to work hard and try to come up with a solution, but I don't know what's going to be in that report. My colleagues, other than the conferees, don't know what's going to be in that report, and we'll just have to see what's there and whether the support's there. The problem with this is with so many other things, is that there's so much money involved and so many lobbyists involved and so much pressure that just the smallest thing can tip a vote one way or the other. Yeah. And with a vote total that's as tight as it was on passage, and only 19 votes on the vote to go to conference on the constitutional amendment.
I saw that.
We don't have test votes like they do in Congress, right?
Right.
But if we did, that was one. And so I think it's one of those things you need to look at and realize we are a 1 or 2 vote margin either way, in my opinion.
Is this something that you hear from constituents a lot? Because I'm thinking, Baldwin County, you're a border county, if you will, with Florida right there. And then Mississippi, not too far away. So I'm wondering, is this something constituents are actively engaged in, like talking to you about?
Yeah, so my constituents want to vote on a lottery. They are keen on that, demanding on that, and the Senate bill provided that. The House bill did too, but that's what they're after.
Casinos, sports bet.
My constituents are unconcerned about the balance of that. So they want a lottery. The casino issue is not an issue, except for they don't want it anywhere near Baldwin County or our beaches. And that's elected officials, that's regular folks, that's everybody. Says do anything and everything, even at the expense of a lottery, to keep any casinos or any type of other gaming out of our area. So
they don't want Biloxi to be in Orange Beach.
They absolutely do not. We have the mayors in Orange Beach and Gulf Shores and Foley have worked really hard to make our environment very family friendly. Fairhope and Daphne have their own feel to them, and nobody wants to inject casinos into that atmosphere.
Interesting point. Well, look, we're out of time, but thanks for coming on and explaining these issues, and we'll see you next week.
I'll be here.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
From its establishment in 1969 by the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, also known as the Swampers, until the mid-1980s, the Muscle Shoals Sound Studios in Sheffield, Colbert County was one of the most sought-after recording studios in the nation. Muscle Shoals played a prominent role in American popular music, both as a production facility and as a stylistic embodiment of Southern regional music. The studio also held a unique place in the narrative of soul music in the early 1970s. From the Rolling Stones to Aretha Franklin, performers who recorded at the Studio represent some of the most notable and popular recording artists of the time. The remarkable consistency of the music created by the Swampers is a testament to the synergy of the players and their dedication to the art of recording. The studio's legacy, which is internationally recognized, testifies to music's ability to bring people together. Muscle Shoals Sound Studio was placed on the National Register of Historic Places on June 2, 2006.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night for our Week in Review episode. That's 7:30 here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.